The whispered words that shattered my world came not in anger, but in the sweetest voice I had ever trusted. My daughter-in-law smiled as she delivered them, her hand resting on her barely visible belly, her eyes gleaming with a cruelty I had been too blind to see. I am Eleanor Whitmore, and at 65, I thought I had weathered every storm life could offer. I had raised 3 children, buried my parents, survived my husband's heart attack, and built what I believed was a fortress of family love around me. But on that humid Tuesday evening in August, as the ceiling fan whirred overhead, and the scent of my homemade pot roast filled the dining room, I discovered that the most devastating betrayals come from those we hold closest to our hearts. After Richard's retirement from his accounting firm, we had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Our eldest son Michael lived across town. Our daughter Patricia had moved to California, and our youngest James had finally found stability after marrying Melissa 2 years ago. She was 24 with auburn hair and a laugh that made everyone turn toward her. From the very first week, she called me Mom and seemed genuinely smitten with my sensitive son's gentle nature. When Melissa suggested we downsize from our large family home, I thought it was thoughtful. She found us the perfect condominium, organized the entire move, and ensured our transition was seamless. The new place was lovely but more isolated than our old neighborhood, making me increasingly dependent on our Sunday dinners with James and Melissa for social connection. That dependence grew stronger after Richard's second heart attack 18 months later. Though minor, it left him more fragile. Melissa stepped in immediately, offering to help with grocery shopping and doctor's appointments. She would arrive Wednesday afternoons with expensive groceries, claiming she had gotten deals at the wholesale club. She would stay for hours, organizing our medications and cleaning our kitchen. I should have questioned why a young woman with a full-time job had so much time for us. Instead, I felt grateful for a daughter-in-law who truly cared. The first crack in my trust came 6 months ago when Melissa asked to borrow $40 for groceries she had already purchased. As she unpacked bags filled with expensive items we never used, I began paying attention to details I had previously overlooked. I found a credit card statement in James's name, showing a $300 charge at the wholesale club on the same day she had borrowed $40 from us. Over the following months, inconsistencies mounted. Melissa's stories about her receptionist job became contradictory. She mentioned working late on Tuesdays, then would arrive at our place Tuesday afternoons, claiming she got off early. The expensive groceries continued, always paired with requests for small cash loans. By Christmas, we had given them over $2,000 while their lifestyle seemed to be improving rather than suffering. The truth emerged on New Year's Eve at their house party. A woman named Carol mentioned that Melissa used to work at her dental office but had quit 6 months ago to start a consulting business. 6 months ago was exactly when Melissa's increased involvement in our lives had begun. The next morning, I visited the dental office and confirmed Melissa had worked there briefly 2 years ago but left long before I thought she had started. The receptionist remembered her well because there had been confusion about missing petty cash when she departed. That August evening when everything unraveled began normally. James seemed quiet, Richard was in good spirits, and Melissa was her usual charming self. As we cleared dinner, she asked to speak with me privately in the kitchen. She closed the door and turned to face me with an expression I had never seen before, cold and calculating. Without preamble, she placed her hand on her stomach and said she was pregnant. For a moment I felt joy. Then she continued speaking. "The baby isn't James's," she said matter-of-factly. "It's Richard's." The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the counter to steady myself, certain I had misheard. But her malicious smile left no room for confusion. "I thought you deserved to know before things get complicated," she continued conversationally. "Think about all those Wednesday afternoons, Eleanor. All those times I stayed for hours while you ran errands. Richard and I had plenty of opportunities to get to know each other better. When I whispered that it was impossible, she laughed musically. Has he seemed different lately? Happier? More energetic?" She stepped closer, and I caught the perfume that had been clinging to Richard's shirts lately. The thing is, I'm not sure what I want to do about this situation. It could stay our secret, or it could become a much bigger problem for everyone involved. I understood I was being threatened. When I asked what she wanted, she explained that James and she needed more financial support, and that Richards and her special relationship needed to be respected. James interrupted us before she could say more, and Melissa instantly transformed back into the glowing, expectant mother. I watched my son's face light up with joy as she announced the pregnancy. Watched Richard beam with happiness at becoming a grandfather again, while I stood there feeling more alone than ever. That night, I began to plan. The next morning, I sent Richard grocery shopping and systematically searched our belongings. In his dresser, I found a folded note from Melissa in intimate tones. In his wallet was a photograph of her I had never seen. His closet held hidden gifts: a silk scarf, expensive chocolates, poetry books. Most damning was a hotel keycard in his coat pocket from a place we had never visited together. I confronted Richard that evening, laying out the evidence. He did not deny anything, instead aging 10 years before my eyes as he confessed to a 3-month affair that began when I joined a book club and left them alone on Wednesday afternoons. She was so kind, so interested in everything I had to say, he said barely audibly. After the heart attack, I felt like such a burden. Then Melissa would listen to my stories like they mattered. When I told him about the pregnancy, hope flickered in his eyes before resignation took over. He confirmed the baby could be his. The next morning, I called James and told him everything as gently as possible. He listened in stunned silence as I explained Melissa's lies, the money she had taken under false pretenses, and the affair. When I finished, he sat quietly before asking if I was sure about the baby. She told me herself, I said. She wanted me to understand that she now has leverage over this family. Something hardened in James's expression. I told him I would support whatever he decided, but that I could not continue enabling what had been happening. The following Wednesday, when Melissa arrived for her usual visit, I was ready. When she walked in with her grocery bags and bright smile, I was sitting calmly in the living room. I've made some decisions, I told her. I will not be giving you any more money, accepting groceries from you, or hosting Sunday dinners anymore. Her mask slipped momentarily before she leaned forward conspiratorially. Eleanor, you're going to need my help more than ever if you want to be part of your grandchild's life. You're not offering help, Melissa. You're demanding payment for access to my own family, and I'm not participating anymore. When she threatened to destroy our family, I told her I had already informed James of everything. For the first time since I had known her, she looked genuinely shocked. James is a good man, I continued. He'll do what's right because it's who he is, not because you've manipulated him. When she claimed I had no proof, I pulled out copies of financial records and a small recording device, bluffing about having recorded our kitchen conversation. What do you want? She asked, and I knew power had shifted. I want you to leave. Pack your things, divorce James, and start over somewhere else. In exchange, I won't press charges for theft or make our recording public. She stared at me for a long moment before saying, You're not as weak as I thought. No, I agreed. I'm not. 3 days later, James called to say Melissa had moved out and divorce papers would be filed. Richard and I separated 2 weeks later. Some betrayals cut too deep for healing. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. DNA tests confirmed Richard was the father, and he began paying court-ordered support. Meanwhile, I rebuilt my life as a single woman for the first time in 40 years. I moved downtown, joined clubs, volunteered, and reconnected with friends. The most surprising discovery was how much I enjoyed my own company. For decades, I had defined myself as someone's wife and mother. Now I remembered parts of myself that had been dormant. My love of poetry, museums, and new experiences. James and I maintained a close relationship. He threw himself into work, took business classes, and began dating a woman named Rebecca, who seemed genuinely kind. A year later, I ran into Melissa at the grocery store with her toddler son. When I told her the boy was lovely, she seemed surprised by my civility. She offered something like an apology, saying she had been in a bad place and made choices she was not proud of. It was not exactly accountability, but it was more than I had expected. These days, I wake each morning with a sense of possibility I had forgotten was available. I have plans and goals that belong entirely to me, relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. I have learned to trust my instincts and act on my own behalf without guilt. Last month, James introduced me to Rebecca. She has genuine warmth and looks at my son with admiration rather than calculation. They are taking things slowly, having learned to be careful about trust, but I think they have a real chance at building something healthy. Richard and I occasionally exchange brief emails about practical matters, but we have no personal relationship. I hear he is adjusting to single fatherhood and genuinely loves his son. The betrayal that nearly destroyed me ultimately became the catalyst for discovering my own strength. I learned that protecting myself is not selfish, that demanding respect is not unreasonable, and that starting over at 65 is not only possible but liberating. The woman who once defined herself by how well she took care of others has learned to take care of herself first, and that has made all the difference.